Wow. This is a good old tune that I wrote for a Hendrix DVD. And in today's episode number 53, we want to talk about fuzzes. And I thought Hendrix and fuzz make some sense. And this is how it sounds when I plug it in. Anyway, pretty cool. That's the Wampler Ratsbane.
Yeah, a brand new one for us to try out, which we're going to do later
in the
episode, right?
Yeah, in the second half of the episode. But today's topic, which is a bit a heavy one, wait a minute, I get rid of my backing track, is about the power amp history.
Yes.
And maybe you remember the episodes before. I talked a lot about speakers, the cabinets. There were, the nano cap, the fat cap, the twin cap. Because my feeling is most guitar players talk about amps and preamps and pedals, which is a very important subject. But all the time people forget about the power amp stage. And when you think about how the whole guitar tone started, it was very, very simple amplifiers, and basically they were kind of power amps with a tone control. Super simple. And I thought, also having in mind our episode where I was comparing the Iridium and the Mercury, that we need to talk about the power amp as well, since preamp sounds everybody understands. There's a tone control and I dial in more bass and there's the bass. This is what we all understand. But that there are different types of power amps, power amp technologies and things that we should be aware that they actually do exist. I thought about that. That's a nice topic. And I came to that topic also with our dear friend Hughes, who is, the D-Flex, who's doing the D-Flex. And we talked after the last episode, as we do, and I was already going a little bit into that direction. And then I thought, while we're talking, we know, it was like, yeah, that's a great topic. So we have a video that Hughes did when he was comparing the AMP1, which was the silver edition.
Okay.
Because when you switch on the silver from clean to vintage, the character of the power amp changes on our silver edition, on the first one. I changed that on the Mercury, but he did a video on that. So there's a link here where you can watch Hughes showing you the difference in his video. So that's a tiny one. For me, today is the big thing where I want to explain first the technology, and second, what's in for us guitar players. So I sent you a little video yesterday about a guy from London that was explaining the different types of technologies. There is class A, there's class AB, and there's class D, used for audio. There's also class C, but it's not used for audio. So A, AB, and D.
Yeah.
And the guy in that video did a little, what is it? Analogy.
So easy.
Yeah, with tap and tap water.
Yeah.
And I found it quite a nice picture to explain what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's a very basic way of describing how the three technologies are different. It was really useful.
Yeah.
Do we actually have a link to that we can maybe share?
We will do it
Yeah,
later.
we'll link it down below.
Sorry, I just sent it to you and didn't send it to the guys. But how would you describe what you heard? And then I go into the deeper shit. I mean, do you remember what Class A meant to you with the tap always open?
Yeah, basically he's using this analogy of having like a tap like you'd have with your kitchen sink, and you turn it on to get the power out. And from what I understood, I'm coming from the same angle as I guess quite a few of you are, quite a beginner when it comes to the differences and the scientific background behind power amps. So for me, you've got the three different types, the Class A, the Class AB and the Class D that we're going to look at, that are most important for us. And Class A, from what I understood, was you have this tap which is on all the time, and it's basically on at full power all the time, and you take from it what you want when you need it. And that means that it's therefore the least efficient of the types, because you're always running all the water out of it.
Right. Okay, and that's the easiest way to understand Class A, which means the water is kind of, the electrons is kind of, the current is full on all the time, which means this technology has, well, maximum consumption of power all the time, and only a very, very little usage for the music, for the output to drive the speaker. And all the energy that is not used going to the speaker is turned into heat. And therefore we have our beautiful AC30, which is known as one of the hottest amps on this planet. I don't know if you ever have been sitting on one that has been switched on for a while.
No.
And the old ones, they have kind of metal, what is it, kind of ventilation covers. And they are, what is it? Is it die cast, or it's like, it's proper thick metal, and they get so hot. When you sit on the AC30, it actually burns your eggs, your balls. Anyway, let's go. Okay, okay. That's Class A for a musician. Let's get technical here. I have this little schematic of a Class A amplifier, which is again very simplified. What we see here is like a tube, a transformer, and a speaker. That's all you need. This would be something you need for a single-ended, because there's only one tube, Class A amplifier. Okay, it's basically the tube, the transformer, and the speaker. And this makes a power amp. Super simple. Okay, on the left side of that you see a more scientific diagram that shows you the current and the signal. The small blue curve, which is the input signal, and the red curve is kind of the bias curve of the tube. And maybe you can notice that this curve is not all the way straight. This curve is not, it has a little, it has a section where it's more straight, like this upper section, and there's like, it's bended down there. So, and what happens is this little signal, the sine wave here, gets kind of amplified by that factor, which comes from here to there, to this kind of big signal. And that's the job of that tube. So that's the bias. And you can see that we can only use a certain section of that whole range. That's Class A, very simple. The problem here is, you know, the tap is always on full, the power is always running full, but we can only use up to 50% maximum of the headroom anyhow, and most of the time 50% would be like everything cranked, and that's only 50% turning the energy into sound. All the rest is lost. Typically, it's only 30%. So the Class A amp is the least efficient amp on the way, and it's of course the oldest one because it's the most simplest one.
Yeah.
You know, the whole amplification history started with tubes, and it is the most simple design, and on the one hand the least efficient, but also the most puristic, because there's no components in there, literally. There's a few more that we need here to make the whole thing working, but it's a super simple thing to make, and therefore it has usually for the musician the quality of being pure, because most of them are designed in a proper way, because they are so simple. You can hardly fuck it up. So that's the beauty from the technology point of view when it comes to Class A. So Mind, it's a very low efficient design, but it's a very simple design, and it is a puristic design. That's the technology.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Vox AC30 as being a famous Class A amp. What are some other examples that you could share?
all the old, very old 40s, 50s Fenders, Deluxes, and don't ask me. I have one here, which is the Bassmaster from Hughes Kettner. I was involved in this. This is kind of a Fender, single-ended. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can show that. Get rid of the Class D. I give you a Class D amp.
Thank you.
And this Bassmaster is simply a Fender schematic. And let me show you. Let me actually play it. I think I can do it in.
We got a great comment from Ben who says, "Are we going to write a class test on this next week?" And the answer is yes.
Yes.
We will test everybody next week.
Yeah.
So be taking notes, please.
Yeah. This is serious. This is serious because this is my guitar. No, this is. Did I? Wait a minute. My guitar goes into here. Okay. Come on. Guitar goes into here. This goes into. I'm confused. Of course. This goes out, and this goes into here. And now I should be. Okay. And. No. Is this off? Did it die? Yeah,
Maybe it did.
I know why it died. Hey, Julian, we put the we put the switch on the wrong position of the switcher. Is it still for transistor or is it tube now? Can you check, please? Okay, guys, I have to explain. Tube amps need a load, as we always repeat, and our switching system is maybe in the right position, maybe in the wrong position.
See what we have here is.
No, it's for transistor now.
Oh.
No, put it to tube. We are on a tube amp now. So let me plug in the front end here and see if we get anything out. Today is not our day. I think we killed a lot of stuff already. So this is, let me see, that's the guitar. Back to the basics. No, nothing is working because this is the, okay, that's the AMP1, it works. That's the other AMP1 that is not working. Why? Wait a minute. Okay, guys, this is way too complicated. I have to simplify the whole thing to understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to show you the beautiful Bassmaster, and I will do in the way that I simply use the same output now and double check if this is still working or if it dies in the meantime. We have a noise. We have a noise, but we have no. Where's the guitar? The guitar used to be No, let me try this one here. And this will work. Yeah, I knew it. So at least I know this signal path. Sorry for that. But I still wonder what we fucked up in our switching system. Okay, let's go back to hey, this is a single-ended Class A design, and it's actually designed for bass.
Yep.
But it's like a very, very old bass amp, and back in the days they didn't make a big difference about bass, or
exactly.
it was a guitar amp
Yeah.
used for bass. So I always like that for guitar as well. Sounds good. So there's nothing wrong about it. The only issue here is, well, it's about, I forgot, about 7 watts or something maximum, which is great for recording, but nothing for stage use.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an example, and it's nice and hot. You can cook some eggs on this one.
Yeah, I felt the pedal that was on
Yeah.
it. It's really rather warm.
Yeah. Okay, that is a class example of a single-ended Class A design. So guys, now it's getting to the deep shit. When time moved on, the technicians thought we need more power because 7 watts is not enough. You know, let's get somewhere and combine, make it more efficient in a way. And then what they did, they came up with the idea of having a Class AB concept. So this thing is a bit more complex. You can see the same sine wave here, which is the input signal, and you can see the tube curve, but you can see that this sine wave is a positive and a negative sine wave, and they are different. So to make this thing more, the top of the sine wave on the green the part is the positive, and the negative is here. And they came up with the idea to move the bias to make this more efficient. And the more you move the bias, the more you come to a typical Class A design. This is why it's called AB. It's between A and B. And the more you move it downwards, the smaller the lower part gets, and that's kind of a section. When you have a little signal, the signal, when it's kind of in the A section, it is as clean as the Class A amp we heard. But when it's exceeding that section, it moves into the B section, so to speak, and that is where we have this funny sine wave side here, which is an artifact which we actually don't want. So they came up with the idea to make it more efficient by having split the wave with a phase inverter, positive and negative, and add positive and negative half waves, positive wave, negative wave. And the problem is that when you put this sine wave back together, which happens here in the output transformer, blah, 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 it is not symmetrical anymore because the source signal is changed. It's not symmetrical. And what you get is a so-called crossover distortion because, yeah, it's asymmetrical here, and if you add asymmetrical to asymmetrical, it is not the same. If there are some graphs, you can see that the shape doesn't match exactly. And guys like Eddie Van Halen, they used to use the bias really high on their amps, and basically what they are trying to do is getting into the class A mode. That's why their amps were getting so hot or nearly blue. I mean, they were kind of cooking the tubes. You know, they tried to raise the current to have as much A in their power amp and not so much B. So that is the funny thing. Somebody invented class A, B to be more effective, and then the musicians went back for, I want kind of class A tone again. It wasn't about, class B sounds better, because the side effect that came with class AB was actually not pleasant to most ears. It is existing and it is part of some sounds because, every funny sound makes history, and even little things like the crossover distortion is an element that make the sound different or richer or whatever. But I mean, if something adds to your overtones of the guitar, it enriches the sound. And so the crossover distortion can be something like that. It can be really ugly if it's very AB, because then the clean signal will be already a lot distorted with the B factor, with the crossover distortion. That sounds like a bit odd harmonics. You don't want that. But if you have a bigger range of A with kind of a healthy signal, and then at a certain point there comes in the from the crossover distortion, it kind of adds another note.
So are there any examples of classic AB amps or AB amp sounds that you can give? Or?
I tell you, any Marshall, any Fender, any 50 watt amp, any 100 watt is AB. Mm-hmm. And the taste of biasing these amps is, I mean, in the old days they tried to max it out simply because this is the purest and the richest and actually kind of the best sound. And the funny thing about guitar players is, from the technology point of view, you try to design a puristic amplifier, an amplifier that does not change the signal too much. But the guitar players always wanted more, more volume, so they gave a fuck about anything, and there was distortion. And that's the thing about why we like the tube amps, because when we get the sine wave clipped with the tube, it's kind of a rounder top here. A transistor has a different bias curve. It is like straight and then flat. And I think we have a graph for that. Yeah. And by the way, here the AB technology was way more efficient. I think it was up to 70%. So there is a lot of there's a lot more headroom available. Those simple Class A amps, most of the time they don't have much headroom. Mm-hmm. And for the bedroom players at home playing the blues, it's nice because they can get the dirty sounds even at living room volume. But if you want to play metal in a live situation, it's the completely wrong thing.
Yeah.
So, what's good for one guy is bad for the other guy. And I'm just talking about what there is, and the side effects coming from tube clipping, and by the way, even like zagging. Zagging is what happens when you hit a note and the power supply of the amplifier, the voltage that is applied to the tubes, drops because all the energy gets sucked out of the capacitors, turned into the output signal to the speaker, and then the voltage is smaller. It's reduced voltage, and it takes some time till the transformer feeds back power into the capacitors. And therefore, like on the vintage Marshalls, who used to have a lower capacitor in the power supply, they do a lot of sagging. They kind of bounce. You hit the note hard and you feel it, boom. The attack is always present, and then there's kind of like a compressor, thing where the signal goes lower and then starts to come back up like blooming. And of course, if you play the blues, that's all you want, because it's not about tightness, and which is not about the most controlled sound. It's about, wow, I can make all these ugly noises and have the blues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And recreating this power amp sag is something that is one of the largest challenges for digital amp makers and also for solid state amp makers, right?
Yeah, because it is not only the sag, it's also the clipping too. I mean, if you have a tube power amp using tubes, the way they clip is different from transistors. Maybe we can show the next graphic, which is the transistor design, and maybe you can see the first thing is what disappears is the output transformer. So it's a super efficient design because you have like two transistors. One is PNP and the other one is NPN. So they are already by nature, the transistors are designed to do like a push-pull thing and phase split it very effective. So and then the output transformer, which is used in the tube amps, maybe I have to explain why tubes need an output transformer. The output transformer in the tube amp is needed because the tubes have a super high output impedance and the speaker has like 8 ohms, like nothing. So therefore, to match that, the high voltage of the tube needs to be converted in a high current to drive the speaker, lower voltage. 300 volts plate voltage on a tube, output tube, is reduced by factor 10, like to 30 volts, and the same happens to the current by 10. So you have whatever, some ampere coming out at a lower voltage, and you had a lot of voltage and very low current at the tube. And this is what you need to drive the speaker. That's physics. Okay, and when we look at the transistor design, we can see it's basically that simple. We have two transistors, we have two diodes, which kind of make the whole thing work. That's all you need. It's so simple, and since the bias curve of the transistor has a range, a large range that is kind of almost straight, which means usable, it's super efficient because this range here, which is straight, is the usable range, which gives you a clear signal. Anything that is under this range, like this little, you see here in the curve, immediately starts to get super funky fuzzy. And talking about fuzzes, when you bias an amp wrong, you can build your own fuzz simply by having stuff like that. That would be an ugly fuzz sound. And the same happens when you exceed the curve with the transistor here. It will be the straight nice bit is over, and it will sound ugly and harsh. But the efficiency goes up to 70%. I mean, mind that this is way more effective by efficiency, and the standard power consumption is not, the tap is not always on full. It has the bias, which is how much you open the tap, and then it's kind of, you open the tap a bit more when you need more. So very clever design to make it more efficient. So the Ruhestrom, fuck it. It is, you need less heat dissipate, heat sinks, and that's a design that has been used for the last decades a lot, because no big transformer needed, and no weird stuff. Very reliable, neutral sounding amplifier design. And that's why most guitar players hate it, because it's too neutral. But from the electronic standpoint, it's already pretty perfect, almost perfect. So, and it doesn't stop here, it goes even further with what everybody heard already, which is Class D. Class D, D doesn't mean digital. D is like, you know, Class A, B, C, D amp designs. There is no conversion with like an analog digital converter. The efficiency of this design is by almost 100%, is 95%. And the reason for that is, if there is no signal at the input, there is no current in the output stage, which means the output stage doesn't produce any heat. Only if there is signal, there is current active, current is flowing. And if there's no signal, no current is flowing. And this is coming from Class A, you know, current all the way 100% up, you know, you can cook your eggs, to a power amp that is not doing anything when not needed, is the most efficient way. Okay, there's Pulsweitenmodulation of blah blah blah. I'm not talking about that, and but just think about these easy aspects, and that makes it possible to design amplifiers that have tons of power, but being ultra compact, efficient, and they actually do sound pretty good if they are designed right. They are more complex to design. So if you try to design a Class D amplifier, you have to be one of engineer level top guys. If you want to do a Class A amplifier, every of our listeners here can do it. I mean, there are even courses, you know, when you go to do-it-yourself kind of things. Okay, don't touch the anode, it's a bit too high the voltage. But, you know, if you stay away from that, this is where the voltage comes, this is where the tube is, get your pins, get your transformer, get a few resistors, and your power amp is working, and you feel like a hero, and it's all good, you know? I'm not saying this is bad. It is something everybody with a standard, I mean, who can hold a soldering iron can build a Class A amplifier, kind of. It is the level of a pickup and a switch and the tone controls in a guitar. Basic electronics. No problem with that. There's a beauty in it. The problem about Class D amplifiers is you have to analyze things because you run into problems, side effects, if you're not knowing what you're doing. So you need to be a proper engineer to do that. I'm not on that level, but I know one guy who has that level, understanding it so much that I'm so impressed. And this is also why we teamed up for our designs with the BluGuitar products. And we are not using any standard blocks available. When you look at some other Class D products on the market, there's some great blocks available, but they are industry standard and they are not customized and not specialized for guitar. They are maybe most of the time they are designed for PA applications, because in the PA system you want all the headroom, you want all the clarity, and you want all the efficiency basically. I mean, when we buy a PA system today, 1000 watts is not it's a no-brainer kind of thing. And here comes the problem for us guitar players. We don't need 1000 watts, but we still want that small and compact amplifier. And we don't want the heat, you know. If AMP1, no problem. And the fan always is very slow, only when you crank the amp, and then you have only 5% turned into heat, and the rest is stage volume. I mean, this thing is loud. This is as loud as a 100-watt Marshall. It hurts. But anyway, so knowing all these elements from the good old days of the tube amps, that the parameters and the side effects of the different technologies that made me as a guitar player happy, that was the starting point of let's do our own Class D nanotube design. So use the most efficient technology there is, which is Class D, and combine it with a bunch of secret fairy dust things to get zagging, to get the clipping of the output tubes, to get the compression of a transformer, to get the crossover distortion, basically anything I've ever seen on tube amps. And if you have that arsenal of artifacts, I would call it artifacts, because by nature a Class D power amp would be boring. And if you just put in one ingredient, and it would not be the same dynamic feeling like on a tube amp, because when, you know, like zagging, the voltage drops, and when the voltage drops, the bias changes, and when the bias changed, you run into a different part of the curve, and it's magic what happens with the amount of artifacts on tubes, because they are not perfect, is so inspiring for a musician to play with. And so there is a lot of different tonal qualities we get from these artifacts. And these artifacts I wanted always. And now with the combination of all these artifacts, I can design my amps and use, you know, some of them in a different way on like the Mercury Edition, and in a different way on the Iridium Edition, because they are two different amps and they use two different power amps. I always tell it, but I've never proved it. And today is the time to show you some of that. Mm-hmm. But just back to the whole philosophy that I'm doing with BluGuitar is, I want to use the best technology available and all the ingredients to get the best tone. It's called tone innovation. So the tone comes first. If it doesn't do the tone, I'm not doing it. There is no innovation. I allow the innovation when the tone is there. Of course, it means we have to make all the tests upfront. But if it doesn't work, I'm not doing it. So in the end, I'm the musician that has crazy technical ideas. We try to work on it. We sometimes we spend weeks months just to analyze stuff, and then in the end, we decide to go away or not. And there's a lot of different design in the AMP1 than what you find on the rest of the market, because I combined a team, including myself and other technicians, with knowledge that is beyond most of the guys in the industry. I'm not saying there are killer designers in the industry, but most of the guys are specialized just in tube amps. For instance, Dave Friedman, great taste, he knows the shit. He can design classic tube amps, but if he would try to design a Class D amp, he doesn't have that kind of background to do it. And that's okay, no problem, but I wanted to try to do something different, something that is maybe sounding as good, and we prove that with our AB videos all the time. And I only allow products that are as good as tube amps. If not, I'm not doing it. So that's the benchmark, but using that more modern technology. And when you look back at BluGuitar in 2014, we came out with this AMP1. And think about how many years you need to get there. So I started the whole thing like in 2010 even, or even 8. You know, it's a long journey. And by now, we can see there's some other pedal amps out there, because people find out, oh, it actually works. At the first glance, everybody thought this is what is this? An overdrive pedal. And where's the amp? Well, it's called AMP1, it's the amp. So by now, finally, since there are more products, which I like to see more product in that format, because that kind of makes the average guitar player aware of, oh, that actually might work. And then if you try it out, I mean, I get very excited emails a lot, and where people go, it replaced my blah 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 and 800, and it's like, I'm so happy not having to lift all that gear anymore. And so yeah, it makes sense. And that's kind of my story about the technology, and using that kind of technology as an example for what we are doing with tone innovation with BluGuitar. Oh, yeah, and we have all these parameters that give us the sponginess, the zagging, that, you know, spongy feeling and zagging comes, I mean, yeah, descriptions for the same thing, or how it feels. The guitar tone is so important, how it feels. For me, the electric guitar is like the difference from a real great tube amp is like playing a real great drum kit. There's a bounce back, and if it's tuned properly, it's an experience. It's a physical experience. Like, bam, if you have a good drum kit, it's exciting. It gives you back all your energy. And that's the thing about a good guitar amp. And this is why I suffer when I have to make compromises. I'm not about compromises, because this takes away of the instrument, the electrical guitar. Okay, do we have any questions on this serious, heavy shit topic?
Yeah, I think everyone's just kind of taking it all in. Ben, I hope you're still taking notes. We'll ask you the questions at the end of the episode.
Okay.
There was an interesting comment from Seller, who says, isn't the AC30 actually a hot biased Class AB amp and
Yes.
not a Class A amp?
Yes. Everybody, you know, AB is between A and B, and hot bias means more A than B.
Yeah.
So that's probably right. And the funny thing is, you know, we musicians call it a Class A amp, but we call this we call this a tremolo, and it's a vibrato because it's a pitch modulation and not a volume modulation.
Yeah.
And so, somebody put some words in this world and we all repeat it and they are wrong. But who cares? They get hot and there's a lot of class A there.
Yes, Sven says, is class D only possible using FETs?
I'm honest, I know, I'm not sure. There might be the option of using transistors, but nobody does it. I'm not the expert on class D. I just know I have an expert on class D, and I tortured him with all I wanted. And this was a long journey, and we have all this juiciness from the tube amps actually available on our Nanotube power amp design. And we are using a lot of different components to get there. It is the Nanotube itself. Maybe I have a Nanotube. Yeah, I had a Nanotube. They are so small, maybe on the floor. Yeah, and I mean, what's the? Here we have a Nanotube here. Very handy stuff. So, the Nanotube is simply the last generation of tubes, and therefore I like that tube. It's super reliable. It has a very long lifespan. Blah blah blah. It's but it has the character. It is a real tube, and therefore we can use it. We can use the characters. This is doing what a real tube is doing, and we know how to get the juice through that in a way that we get the best of the tube things out of it. That's one thing. But the zagging kind of thing done in the AMP1 is done with other schematics, with other tricks, and the tube amp, the clipping, and all that stuff. So I would like to show you the difference of the two amps, and something worked and then I lost it. Let me see if I get the whole. I have to reanalyze the whole switching system. Okay. I'm still plugged in here, which I'm not anymore because this goes back into here. And this was the guitar. And the guitar, no? Is this the guitar? No. Is this the guitar? Yeah, that's the guitar. Nice. So, let me do something. I plug in the guitar over here, and then I have no signal because this has to go into here, maybe. Hallelujah!
Yay!
Okay. So, and if I'm totally great guy, I have the Iridium as well. Happy days. Okay. Okay, different volume, different blah blah blah. Okay, everything sounds as it should. Healthy, we have two amps on clean, nothing to worry about. But now I want to show you what we can change, because we modded this one with a control that is adjusting current feedback, which is kind of a signal that is taken from the output. On the tube amps, it's taken from the output transformer back to the input of the power amp stage. And they used that current to get the amp kind of cleaner, to get it more controlled. And this is where the presence control sits in tube amps. So there, in a classic tube amp, there's a tone stack. that is kind of more in the preamp section, and then there's the power amp, and in that power amp section, in that current feedback loop, there's the presence control and maybe something like a punch control for the low end. And anyway, I play metal with a Strat now. Overdrive. Huh? What did I do wrong? Of course, no master volume, no volume. Get a proper guitar for that. Just one sec. Yeah. Humbuckers. So, and this is like. This would be kind of the standard neutral Class D. It's not Class D, but the neutral setting of an amp. Power amp, a little bit of that. And this is the voicing versus, I have to compensate the volume here, a standard power amp. Telephone, and this is Iridium. So just an example of only one parameter in the game of power amps. And when you buy just a Class D power amp, what you're getting is a super clean power amp and nothing from that. And no dirt, no crossover distortion, no zagging, no nothing. And that's the point. That's all in our amps, and it actually is designed that it reacts 100% like our tube amp references, the stuff that I always do the A/B test for. And therefore, I think BluGuitar is kind of the only company that dares to do A/Bs. The Kemper did a lot of A/B things too, and they sound pretty much the same because their algorithm analyzes the frequency spectrum, and it is so similar, but the whole dynamic action from which we talk here with zagging and etc., it's not the same. And I can tell the difference. If somebody doesn't hear the difference, I'm happy for those guys because their search is over. The tone is already there, next preset there. I'm not happy on that level. What I'm saying is the frequencies you hear from such a modeler is amazingly close to the original. So the first impression is like, it's the same thing because you hear the same noise. But you never get the same dynamics in feel. That's why I still do amplifiers. Otherwise, I would say, hey, Christoph Kemper, job done. I'll be back as a musician. I use your amp. But I'm not using his amp, even though I have high respect for what he's doing because he is one of the geniuses. And I really appreciate that there is other technologies finding other solutions. I'm just doing my thing and I have a different focus. My focus is I want that real tube thing, like no compromise, and just in a different format. So that's my game. Okay, I can do another quick comparison. Okay, we have one preamp here and use two different power amps. So you can... Okay, sorry.
Iridium Edition.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and if I'm not too stupid, I can do... look at the Kabelsalat. What?
Very good questions coming in, by the way.
Okay, cool.
You can look forward to answering them after.
Okay, quick concentration. So what I'm doing next is I use the inputs now on the power amp stage, which is here, effects return, and I do the same on the Mercury, and I should be lucky. So revival drive as preamp. This is now to the Mercury. And we are not using any preamp. That's just two different power amps. Okay, maybe I have to make the sound a bit more presence. What about, can I blend Ghost? Wow, this thing has a lot of knobs.
Yeah, and we literally got it out 15 minutes before we started the show, and it's a little bit more complex than
we thought.
Imagined.
Anyway, we take it as it is. And just to prove, now I'm on the Mercury, and I can change. It is this preamp into this power amp, okay? And that's the Iridium power amp. And I mean, you see, this one has a lot of low ends and oomph and choomph and chuck in the end. And that's 2 amps. So that foundation of that amp gives me a total different feel for the preamp section. When you have that as a power amp, you design your preamp in a total different way. And so what I'm trying to say here is, it's so important to see the whole amp, the whole system. We all think about gain and preamp tubes, and by the way, all the preamp tubes are class A anyway, when we're talking about class A and B, so that design is class A. But anyway, we all think always about the gain knobs and the tone controls and forget about, volume, that's the power amp. The power amp is more important than you think. It's like one big component in the signal path. Besides the speaker, to me, is more than 50%. The preamp is maybe another 45%, but the power amp is as important. Oh, I have only 5% left. Let's make the other one a bit smaller. But or 30, if you know what I mean. At first glance, you think everything happens in the preamp, because this is more like the guitar connects with the tone. And if that's not right, you feel shit. But then it's like how to get the energy to the speaker, like your car tires, how you get the grip and really can race and still stay on the road. And that's part of the power amp. And it's different for what style you're doing. If you are a blues player, you don't want that headroom. That headroom is something that hurts you when you play, you know. But if you're a metal guy and your preamp is doing all that kind of tight overdrive, punchy sounds, you need that headroom. You need that 100-watt headroom, even if you're just playing on 30 watts, because the headroom gives you clarity. And this is what is super nice, having that power at hand. And the beauty of our design is we can actually change it. We have the low gain, the low gain, and the low power mode on the AMP1 Mercury and Iridium. On the Iridium is not needed anyhow. On the Mercury, You can switch it to half power, kind of whatever, 50 watts, 60 watts, by pressing down the switch while switching it on, and then it's more bluesy. Here's another comment that comes to mind. Some people know from tube amps they only sound great at higher volume. Some of the tube amps have a problem. When they have the living room volume, they sound very thin and very... Think about the class A/B thing. When this biasing is not right, you have that ugly sound because the power amp is not in the sweet spot. Stuff like that, you hear the all the time, and that makes a shitty sound. We don't have that problem. So our amp sounds killer at any volume, lowest or highest. And we can tweak it to where we want it, but the technology is kind of designed the way that is in the player's favorite, using all these things and not, oh sorry, I have a crossover distortion at bedroom volume because I have a stage amp, you know? And therefore you have to crank your Marshalls, and therefore you don't need to crank your AMP1, and it sounds sweet on master volume 1, and you get a rich tone from it at any volume. So that's important. Some people think, oh, I can't live without a power soak, I have to get all this stuff in. No, it is a plus to make all these effects more dramatic. Okay, oh, this was, I think, everything I thought about today.
Yeah, that was quite a lesson.
Yeah, I'm the teacher today, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, we do have a lot of questions for you, teacher.
Teacher, yeah.
Related to your volume comment, I saw a very good comment before, which I think has disappeared, but the basic crux of it was someone has been getting very good EVH sounds at home on their amp, and they're wondering that once they get to go back into a band rehearsal studio, turning up the volume here, is it going to sound exactly the same, just louder, or will the tone be affected in some way?
That depends on the power amp design. When the power amp...
Well, I assume he's using one of these. I don't think he said...
Yeah, if it's our... If it's our amp, I can tell you it will pretty much the same, and it will be even, maybe, that's if when he plays an...
it's a Mercury Edition.
It's a Mercury.
Yeah, it's Rory who asked that question.
Yeah, okay. Hey, this is... The tone on our amps is so consistent from low volume to high volume. So I wouldn't be worried. And I tell you, to me, there's an extra magic coming around the 4, 5, 6 range. Ooh, this is where I love it personally the most for stage.
Yeah.
And so I hope you can have that experience pretty soon in the rehearsal room or on stage.
Yeah.
Because it will get even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Another good question from Jeff. What artifacts, you were talking about the artifacts earlier, from a traditional tube amp does the Nanotube provide versus what the special BluGuitar fairy dust provides?
Well, we provide all the artifacts that I'm aware of from classic tube amps, which is zagging, which is power amp clipping, which is compression, which is zero cross distortion, which is, you know, different current feedback designs we've seen. I mean, you know, this is all kind of stuff that I learned over 3-4 decades from tube amps, and everything I could hear inspired me, and I wanted it, and we got all of that, but we kind of put it in there in a way that it makes sense in that product or in that product. I could adjust any of these parameters to a different taste or a different behavior, but it wouldn't make any sense. So my job as a sound designer is to get everything in order to get that tone, and not like, you know, sometimes maybe you have experience that you have a fuzz pedal or, you know, some weird pedal and it sounds like, man, what shall I play with this? You know, it's like I don't have any control. It's like, where's my tone? And where's my pick noise? And so I'm getting everything in order. You know, like there's my defined attack. There is my blooming note that makes the thing not too muddy. I've been criticized for the Silver Edition to be a bit too muddy because I'm too bluesy and I'm too single coily. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I changed from the Silver to the Mercury, and I'm happy with that amp myself. But I'm honest, I still love my first one too. It is not worse. It is just different. The reverb on the Mercury is definitely better. But all the rest is a matter of taste. It's not like, of course, if your personal taste tells you I want a bit tighter sound, the Mercury is your amp. The good thing about the Mercury is, for me, it sits nicely in a classic corner of amplifiers where most of us guitar players live. Yeah. And so I have this kind of corner with the Silver one, and there's the metal guys and the hard rock guys, and I want my Ace 800 a bit modified with a little bit more gain and a bit tighter and a bit more oomph. This is where the world of the Iridium starts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. An interesting question about someone who's not really understanding the Nanotube. And they say it's not a preamp 12AX7 tube, it's designed for AMP1 specifically, or
No.
how did you come across the Nanotube?
Okay.
I'm sure you've told this story before.
That doesn't matter. The standard ECC83 or 12AX7 tube, which is used like 90% of all guitar amplifier preamp tube operations, has first the pins, and it needs a socket. And that's the first problem I have with tubes, because when the socket corrodes, you have funny noises coming from your amplifier. Imagining that in a classic tube amp there is about 3 to 5 preamp tubes, or some have even more. How many contacts you have with a wire put into a clamp, and how many? It's super old school basic technology, and therefore it works. Everybody can repair it, and but it's not the way I would do it in the 21st century. These tubes is kind of the last design, and it's actually not designed to be a power amp tube, because this doesn't have the power of a power amp tube. We use the class D to make the signal big, but it's a tube similar to a 12AX7, but we use that tube together with some other analog components in our design to create all that side effects that tubes create. And the real nanotube is one part of that. It's not the only thing, but it's one part that helps to get all the details, get all the side effects, and get 100% there where I think the real deal tube amp is.
Yeah.
And in electronic terms, it's called a sub-miniature tube. This is Russian made, military graded, the best quality available, and it's like drop it. Oh, this was dangerous. Because, okay, we go totally dangerous. This is the top of an Iridium, and here you can see the tube, how it's glowing. Wait a minute. See this nice. I have too many things in my hand. So maybe you can see this. The tube is glowing, and it is hard soldered to the PCB, and so yeah, the lifespan is I don't know how many 1,000 hours. So basically, once I calculated it, I'll be dead and the tube is still alive. And this tube, you know, my Russian engineer knows the tube back from the days when he was a teenager. And we buy those tubes, and they are sometimes from the 80s, 1980s, and some are a bit younger, some of them are a bit older. But this is like the last generation of tube designs, designed to be used in missiles. You know, like vibration, like mechanical stress, anything, no problem. And that's a good tube to be used in a pedal device where you stomp on it, and maybe the stage is moving and the whole thing is because the bass drum, you know, and it's not a problem for it. Yeah. Okay.
There was a good question from Mick. Why is there no user control on AMP1 to change the tonal properties of the power amp?
This is very simple, because the AMP1 is a compact amplifier, and I didn't want to have more knobs on it. Therefore, there is no presence control. Therefore, there is no, what is it called, punch control, depth control, like on some metal amps. Therefore, I voiced the whole thing in a way that it's most easy to operate. And I know everybody wants more, is eager. I want that control. I'm so special. I want that control. Well, it's not in the AMP1. The AMP1 is designed to be a player's amp, and it's already so versatile. I mean, some people buy an AMP1 and then they write me 3 years later, I discovered totally new sounds out of it. I said, okay, fine, good for even myself sometimes. It has 4 channels. It has so many. It has the low gain mode. It has the low power mode. I think most of you guys haven't even tried that out, and maybe you don't need to. I'm not saying you should. If you are missing something, I'm sure there is more for you somewhere hidden on the AMP1. You know, see our live streams. Sometimes I show you something like that, or write us something and I give you some hints. Or we have this user group, and at the beginning I was kind of more troubleshooting, because like, my clean sounds is overdriven. I said, yeah, it's like a Fender amp. Put it on 10 and your Fender sounds like a fart. Well, this almost sounds like a fart. Just dial back the volume a bit and it's a beautiful sound. It's a big, rich tube sound. And this is my reference. You just have to know how to use it properly. I'm very convinced most of the stuff that you guys want is in there. You just need to find it. I hope I can give you some hints. Okay.
Yeah, Sven says on the Mercury he noticed increased mids and less sizzle, or zizzle as he puts it, when increasing the volume beyond 3. And he's going from a Mercury into a fat cab. Is this an effect of the cab, the room, or just his brain?
It is an effect of everything. Let's start with a cabinet. A speaker, the more you crank a speaker, the more it starts to bark. That's something in physics, because when you move the membrane, the energy is more towards the mids, and the more you put it louder, the more the mids get present. So that's the speaker by nature. This is not my speaker only. It's any Celestion, it's any Jensen, it's any guitar speaker. So that's one factor. The next factor is also that when you crank the AMP1, it makes like 1% different things at higher volume too. And that, like a tube amp, and that all comes in place like in the good old tube world. And this is what he is experiencing.
Yep, there we go. Will the AMP1 be continued when the AMP-X arrives?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, hey guys, I know everybody is so hot about the AMP-X because it will have all this accessible in a way, and will be the ultimate toy for to spend the rest of your life with a single product. But from a player's perspective, grab an AMP1, plug it in, be happy. Because the AMP-X will offer different options, but if you found your tone, there it is. I mean, go back to the nice blues guys, they play a Fender, whatever, plug in and they do music with it. And that's a concept that I really dig as a musician. On the other hand, as the kid in the toy store, I'm also collecting pedals and amps, and you can see it here. You know, I mean, that's also part of my life. So the AMP-X is kind of a bit more, it's kind of both. It's, I hope it will be, you know, the thing that I can tame with all the options and finally reduce, you know, it will be a curve. I personally will spend time with it, and I will have a starting point, and maybe in 10 years' time, I will be at the end of my journey for my personal tones, exploring all the options there are. So it's an exciting thing everybody's waiting for, me included. But on the other hand, AMP1 will never be discontinued, because my concept about the AMP1 was like a Volkswagen Beetle. You know, it is small, compact, doesn't consume too much power. I mean, considering a Beetle versus a Chevrolet, which is the American way, Class A car, you know, you can have your Tankstelle in your fuel station with your car when you go on longer rides. No, this is the concept, and it is at the highest sonic level anyhow. It doesn't get any better, it just gets different. And that's the point. If you are missing something here, get a pedal, you are there. And if this is all you need, it's already there. This is something that people will find out after the AMP-X will be out. Yeah. I mean, it's always the exciting at the beginning, oh, I want that new guitar, blah, blah, blah. And then after a while, you know what? That old thing was great. And I stick to that, because my guitar, the 61 Strat, I got that guitar in the days when people bought humbuckers, Ibanez's with gems and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was always aware of, yeah, that's a great guitar. And the AMP1 is like a great amp. And so even if the world has new features, do I need new features if I have a great Strat? No. Do I need a new amp when I have a great amp like AMP1? Actually, no. So now we will never sell any AMP-X.
No, exactly. Well, if we discontinued AMP1, you would no longer have shirts to wear either, because you're always wearing the one shirt. Yeah, that's the thing. And, and look, we just brought out this new shirt which has an AMP1 on it. So if we discontinued that amp, the shirt would be a waste, and I would just have to take them all home.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was with the band Tic Tac Toe here in Germany, which was kind of the German Spice Girls. The Germans know that band because they were very big and very popular. And the band, 3 female singers, I mean, we're talking girls, age 20 around, they broke up in front of running cameras with, a big drama. Ricky, crying and yelling at each other. And the whole merchandising, millions, they had merchandising for their big fan audience, was lost the value just in a minute, in seconds. So, no, we will never discontinue AMP1. AMP1 is always, for me, it's a format, it's a classic. And this is why I put so much into designing AMP1, to make my own switches, to make my own house. The toolings for the AMP1, the whole thing costs 80,000 whatever, euros, dollars or something, just to have my own design knobs, because it's a classic. And I went all the way because I knew I wanted to create a classic. And at the beginning people go, maybe it's an amp, maybe it's not an amp, we never know what it is. You will find out in the end, it is a classic. So trust me, it is a classic. There's nothing wrong about AMP1. It will be always a great amp.
Yep, and it's here to stay.
Yeah.
And I've just looked at the time and noticed that we're getting quite late, so we have to go to another classic, which is fuzz pedals, because we promised we would show you a bunch of those, including the new Wampler Ratsbane, which is down here. I think we have a camera which is looking down at us here, do we? Maybe? Yes, there it is. So Thomas has a selection of some of his favorite fuzzes, and we got a couple of new ones.
Yeah, I hand you this guitar just for fun. So let me change the setup to a straightforward setup.
Everybody who's still here, please list your favorite fuzz pedal in the chat right now. So for a future fuzz episode, we'll try and get some of yours in as well.
Okay. So, well prepared, like last minute for sure. We have that beautiful Quartermaster, the gig rig switcher.
Yes.
And we use, where's the output? The output can go straight into a Mercury, which is too short. Then we take another cable, and I'm using this one. Come on, I have an idea. What about this goes here? Get rid of the switcher. Get this in here. I give you this and change. Yeah, please. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So no sound. Why? Because I'm on the wrong amp. Okay, this is. Okay, let's put everything in the middle that the sounds here. Okay, that's kind of my basic tone. I try number 1 first. So that's the Jimi Hendrix Dunlop.
Yeah.
And I own this for, I don't know, 30 years. It's a real big housing for whatever, 1 or 2 transistors. It is, but I mean, this is like the replica of the stuff that Jimmy used.
Why did they make it this shape? Do you know?
It looks like a face. It was called a Fuzz Face. It was a.
So they came up with the name first and then said, okay, we need to make a pedal that looks like a face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuzz Face, Arbiter Fuzz Face. Yeah, Dallas Arbiter Fuzz Face. This is like the copy. So this one is Bernd Meiser BSM. Is actually he's the booster king to me. And wait a minute, we saved the. I love his treble boosters, and he built that pedal kind of a fuzz booster because he's Mr. Booster King, and so he had a fuzzy booster.
So this pedal looks like it has no controls on it, but actually it does. It has 2
on the sides. One is called the Attack, and one is called the Spectrum. Okay, I switch to. Everything is on bypass, so this is now pedal 1. That's, by the way, that's something I always. Wait a minute, I have a noise gate in my amp. Is that? That's noise gate. Nice. The cleaning up of boosters is the magic I'm excited about. Bernd Meiser, once the COVID thing is easier, I will invite him here to the Academy of Tone. Mm-hmm. I hope I can do this very soon because he has, I don't know, 50 pedals, and I kind of like them all. It's like little spices. They are not so dramatic, but they always have a color, a flavor, and it's a very tasty little thing. And here, bypass, and then expanding the range of cleaning up when you turn down the volume and getting a fuzzy boost element to it. Nice.
Yeah, and totally different from what the Fuzz Face is offering you, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Fuzz Face also cleans up, but it is like instant Hendrix, of course, not only by the name, but it's like over the top already.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3 is the 3699
by Dan Electro, which it looks like an old pedal, but it's actually a really new one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Came out a year or so ago, and I think it's modeled after a really old fuzz pedal called the Fox Fuzz, Foxx.
Ah, okay.
From the 70s or something like that.
I'm not the expert on this one, but
and it has an octave in it.
Ah, let's hear what it does. That's the octave.
Yeah.
Can you go back for the octave?
Yeah.
The trick you have to do is roll back the treble, because this is natural treble. No treble. It's cleaner.
Yeah.
Because it just has the whatever the root note and not too many overtones, and the octave from the fuzz, from the octave fuzz.
Got a mid boost knob as well, which I'm going to flip.
Bark. What I like about a pedal is that you have kind of 2 in 1. I mean, you have a standard nice fuzz and you have the octave in one pedal. Usually I have on my Hendrix board, I have 2 fuzzes. One is the standard and one is an extra pedal that gives me the octave.
Yeah, this one does both.
Yeah.
I quite like that. 2 separate foot switches, which actually means it doesn't work if you've got it in a switcher unit like this, because...
Yeah, then you only bring in the pedal as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But you still can hit the other foot switch.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's a cool pedal. We need to maybe look at this in a bit more detail at some point. And further along we have the Ratsbane, which you played at the start for the Hendrix Jam.
Yeah.
And is the new Brian Wampler take on the Rat pedal.
Yeah.
Which I think most people don't really think of as being a fuzz pedal, but it is a fuzz pedal, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when the here, there's my Rat. Can you take this in the corner?
Yeah.
Sorry, it needs that extra power supply. This is not the most sought after version, but that's the one that I bought when I was a teenager. It's I used it as a high gain overdrive. It's like, finally I get some thick gain, and it was not as dirty as all the other stuff, or like where is it? One more time, please. This Russian monster, which is the Softec Big Muff, which is another fuzz. Oh, see, 120 Deutschmarks. But the metal housing is so heavy, I think today's pedal boards have that weight. Try this. It's about the same weight as the guitar.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That is a heavy beast. Yeah.
And imagine what's in there. There is nothing in there. There's a fucking transistor. And okay,
next on the Ratsbane.
Yeah. Okay, I can use different settings here. I kind of was Hendrixy cranked, but this is, I like it also because it's so flexible and you have a subtle fuzz effect too. A little less gain. Where's the gain?
Yeah, there's like the gain is this one at the top right, but there's also a switch here that will reduce.
Pickups on full with a Strat. Yeah, by the way, this is a light fuzz effect, and this is also what you get from some misbiased tube amps. And it's nothing for metal, like, but it's something. Nice for bluesy stuff, yeah. So the red, I like it because it's, and listen how clean it is. It's compared to, okay, we are not fair in all the way because the gain might be different, but does the cleanup thing impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next on the list? What is the cross? No, Coral.
Sitting in the corner here and not connected is a Digitech Carcosa fuzz, which is a quite affordable, quite new pedal that apparently does many different kinds of fuzzes. Should we plug it in quickly and listen to it?
Go for it.
We'll just have to twist some knobs and see.
Yeah, okay. I switched
does. Yeah.
I switched to another one. So and while you do that, there is a YouTube channel called Pedalicious, which is me again, using different pedals with the AMP1. So actually what we are doing right now with different products from different manufacturers and especially fuzzes, I've done already on Pedalicious. I think it's 4. Switch on and off to see if it works. Yeah. I use this instead. It's a great fuzz. Can you put it on again? 5? Oh, it was 4. A bit more gain, a bit more drive, or whatever it's called here. Makes my guitar sound bigger as it is.
Yeah.
I think this is why Hendrix loved fuzzes so much. because it made the guitar, the Strat especially, big. And that's, you have to know how to play a fuzz. Most people go and play. That's not a sound. Now I play. You need a lot of articulation in your right hand. Otherwise, it's like only muddy.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of a fuzz, which is asymmetrical clipping. This is what we learned from the power amp at the beginning. And this is kind of, now we come round full circle. This is something for guys that want to work with their tone. And that's a concept of playing. And it can be endless the weirder the pedal is. And coming back to the Wampler is kind of a great, more controlled fuzz, which has its great qualities. This has a sweet spot. I can find sweet spots in any of these pedals. And the great thing about fuzzes is, from the technical point of view, is like nothing. It's a little bit of odd clipping and some EQ, and the rest is chaotic. But this is the beauty in it. So that's the perfect example of what is not a Class D power amp. Can we show that one? We missed that today, unfortunately, but who cares? This is a Seymour Duncan Power Stage 200 Class D power amp. Lots of power, but super clean.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing I've seen on a lot of modern boards where people will have just a pedal board, they'll have one of these and they'll have a bunch of different overdrives, different modulation, time-based effects, and just run that. Yeah.
It does a great job, but me personally, I would be missing some of that growl. I mean, just from what you heard with the fuzz now, this is like dramatic, but in a power amp stage, you get a little bit of that, and you get a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and that spices up your tone.
Yeah.
And this is a brutal, great sounding, clean power amp. If you are a metal guy, maybe this makes you happy. If you're a blues guy, you have to have very dirty pedals to get the character going.
Yeah.
Me, I like to spread all the character across all the stages involved, and that makes to me the richest tone possible.
Yeah.
And this is how it always was with great tube amps.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
the same thing with tube amps as with fuzz pedals. They're extremely individual, right?
Yeah.
So what is your cup of tea might not be mine.
yeah,
Guys watching at home, I bet everyone had a favorite out of these four that we just tried quickly. There's a bunch of different fuzz pedals that have been mentioned in the chat there. People are talking about the Fuzz Factory. People are talking about, they're enjoying the Carcosa, for example, the Solar Sound Tone Bender.
oh yeah,
Someone mentioned a Big Muff previously.
yeah, sure.
There are so many different
Yeah.
kinds and flavors, and they're all unique to you. And of course, every other aspect of the rig affects what the pedal will sound like.
Yeah.
The guitar, the speaker, the amplifier, blah.
And this is how you react to the pedals, and that's the beauty of pedals. The pedals inspire you. You react to a pedal, and that's maybe inspiring, or it's kind of a break, like, oh, that's not my cup of tea. It makes you feel worse, and it's a great source of inspiration. If you find a pedal that that makes your existing tone richer in a way that you discover, oh, I can express myself even more than just hitting the note. It's like, there's this like and which I was always doing, and hit there, finally it is. So checking out pedals is actually an endless fun. And therefore I did Pedalicious. At the moment I don't have the time to make any more of these, but maybe go back and watch them, because I've literally have done hundreds of pedals in, I don't know, 50 episodes or something, and tons of fuzzes, and because I like them all, it's like, it's like they all have their own little character, and it's fun to meet them. But I learned that I'm not the biggest fuzz player, so I do own a couple of fuzzes myself. But in a live situation, for my personal tone, the fuzz is only on the second important bit. I'm more the treble booster guy, and I want my delay and blah blah blah. So, but once in a while, having a good fuzz is fun. And I'm never stopping to be curious about the next fuzz coming out.
Yeah, exactly. And every year at NAMM, there's a bunch of new fuzzes.
Yeah. Or my friend here from Saarbrücken, Frank Post, who Looper's Paradise, who I got a few of these, and I've done the Pedalicious together. He always comes up because he knows me. I got this brand new fuzz from blah blah blah, Origin of Effects or whatever the company is called. And it sounds killer. And then I go to this place and say, oh, another noisy bastard. Or he has got an original old Marshall Super fuzz, which is the noisiest thing on the planet, but it sounds so good. Yeah, I don't know what is this about. Yeah, anyway, so it never stops. Never stops.
It never stops. If you guys are interested in pedal videos, Pedalicious is the name of the channel, where Thomas has demoed a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Again, more questions coming in, but I think we're out of time, especially in terms of playing, because it's after 10 o'clock here, and the neighbors will come and bang on the door, and the police will come and get us now as well, because we currently have a 10 o'clock curfew, right?
Yeah, but you have the official signature that I signed, BluGuitar.
Yeah, exactly.
We are on live. All sorted. Hey guys, I think it's been another big pleasure to be the teacher in tone and crime and whatever for you guys. I'm not sure what I'm doing next episode, but it never stops. It will be another one. So thanks for watching, and maybe see you next week. I have no plans yet.
Yeah, but the one thing that's sure is that episode 54 will be taking place.
Absolutely.
8 p.m. Wednesday night, back here.
As
Thomas
usual.
will be there. I might be. There might be an exciting guest instead. Who knows?
We will see. Surprise, surprise. Okay. So thanks for joining, and see you next week. Cheers.